And it affects nearly every organ in the body. It's actually linked to 7 of the 15 leading causes of death: heart disease, diabetes, infection, cancer, accidents, 5 times more depression, 2 times more medical visits and resulting hospitalizations, 4 times more accidents, and more frequent trouble with family or at work. Improving sleep is one of the most important starters. If somebody is asking me where to actually start on the infinity loop, if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep or 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I would say really look into your sleep opportunities first and foremost. And here's why. When we wake up, when we don't get a good night's sleep, we wake up tired. We are less resourced. Studies show that when we don't get enough sleep, we eat more. In fact, we eat 300 to 500 more calories a day. And the foods that we choose are the more calorie dense, unhealthy options. So sleep directly impacts any of our nutritional efforts. When we're tired, we do not feel like moving. We do not feel like getting active or going to the gym. We're not playful. Um, and it impacts the other part of that loop. When we're tired and we're less resourced or under-resourced and we're feeling fatigue, we can come out more tense with our family and friends. We can be less effective, less productive at work. So the impacts kind of go all along that infinity loop. There are many ways to improve sleep hygiene. I wrote in a couple that really help to impact not only the quantity but the quality of sleep. Maintaining consistency is a really important one. Going to sleep and waking up at the same time, even on the weekends if possible, is really helpful. Making time to wind down. A lot of people, there's a disconnect to the fact that I have spent the whole day tense and stressed out at an 11 out of 10, totally in survival mode. And then I get into bed and I think, oh, I'm just gonna fall asleep. That stress that we've carried all day long is coming into that bed with us. So making the time to actually transition into sleep, to wind down, is really helpful in getting a good night's sleep. This is where the expressive writing that I was mentioning before can be really helpful. Another way that it's called is a brain dump, where you're really pouring everything that's in your head onto a piece of paper. You can hold on to it and put it by the nightstand so that you can refer back to it in the morning. This is a way to tell yourself, okay, I'm letting this go right now. I'm transferring it to this paper. I'm not forgetting about it. I'm going to take a look at it first thing tomorrow morning. But for right now, I'm going to separate myself from all of this that's coming up for me, from all of these things that I have to do, from all of these worries that I have. So making the time for that is a really important piece in enhancing your sleep quality and quantity. Darkness is really helpful. If you can, for some people it's sleep mask, for others blackout curtains, black lights from the devices if you're using your devices in bed, which ideally you're not, but if you are, to really dim it to nighttime mode, and really creating that state of darkness in your room. Same thing with being cool. Our body temperature naturally drops at night, so cool rooms help that along so that we fall asleep quicker and we actually stay asleep longer. If there's a way to cease device use before bed, that can be really impactful too. An hour or two is ideal, but any amount of time to transition from device to sleep is helpful to improve the quantity and quality of your sleep. And then avoiding caffeine and nicotine, both of them are stimulants, and also alcohol right before bed, because it actually disrupts your deep sleep, and keeps you out of that, gives you a more superficial state of sleep through the night. If you're a napper, trying to not nap after 3 p.m. is also really helpful. So we talked about self, which is it's the opportunity for regulation. If we can regulate ourselves, we can connect to all the areas that we need to resource, which are our sleep, our nutrition, our activity, and our play. Once we come from a more resourced full battery, now we can enter into this next external connection space where we can show up intentionally, connecting to our family and friends, our work, our spirituality, however we're connected to that, and our natural world. If your body doesn't feel safe and regulated, it's much harder to meet your need for connection. Regulation and connection impact our physical biomarkers and outcomes, including cholesterol, blood sugar, chronic pain, our microbiome, and our longevity. Connection is key for safety. When we're dysregulated, disconnected, when our needs go unmet, that's a sense of threat. We get a sense of threat, a state of fight, flight, freeze, or faint, that ultimately leads to a state of chronic stress, inflammation, and that chronic inflammatory state in our systemic system leads to cardiovascular disease, cancer, autoimmune conditions, neurodegenerative disorders, viral infections. On the other side of that is in regulation, in resourcing, in meeting our needs. We send our bodies signals of safety. We decrease inflammation. We optimize immunity. We promote a state of rest, digest, reproduce, and thrive. This is a slide just showing all of the different areas that chronic inflammation impacts, from cancer to neurological diseases, to lung diseases, to bone and joint diseases, metabolic disorders, heart disease, and autoimmune conditions. Lack of connection may be in part due to not having the right people in your life to connect to, but more often it is due to not having the skills to connect with the people who are in our lives, not showing up authentically, not showing up with empathic presence, not showing up with presence at all. And it's very hard to maintain presence when we're under-resourced and living in survival mode. It's very hard to want to connect, to contribute to others when we're living in a scarcity mentality. Despite social media, despite having so many quote unquote friends, many people are feeling sad, lonely, and isolated. This is what I was talking about earlier as far as connecting to self. Sad, lonely, isolated. Those are unpleasant feelings. What are they telling us about needs that are not being met? Needs like connection, companionship, community. And loneliness, that sense of loneliness and isolation, has health risks, direct health risks, increased premature death from all causes. It's a risk similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 50% increased risk of dementia, 29% increased risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke, increased depression, anxiety, suicide. This is not benign. We live in survival mode, in scarcity mentality, in a lack of connection to self. And then through that, a lack of connection to others, we live in what we call artificial harmony. We sacrifice our authenticity to maintain harmony, or sometimes we're so numbed out, we're not even connected to our authenticity. We suppress our feelings and our needs, all signals of danger. We create that artificial harmony, which leads to fight or flight. The antithesis of that is learning how to share authentically and accepting what might arise from that. That is about connecting to our needs, right? Recognizing what our feelings are telling us, how do we connect to our needs, and then what do we do in those given situations as far as what our options, what our strategies are. For example, I want, let's say you're on a nutrition plan because you want to lose weight. Losing weight is a strategy, right? What's the need? Maybe the need is for health. Maybe the need is for acceptance. Maybe the need is for self-worth, right? Once you can connect to the needs, losing weight might be one strategy, but maybe there are also others, and maybe you even connect to that desire to lose weight in a different way. The meaning behind it, the connection to it, to why this strategy is even important to you, is something that you connect to versus, I just need to do it. I need to take out the trash. I need to, like I said, go to the gym. I need to check. So one of the ways, and this is something that we're actually not going to get in today, but I invite you to look into on your own if it's something that if this notion of connection, of living in artificial harmony, of it resulting in that sense of loneliness and isolation, despite maybe the social media presence that we may have, or the social media connections that we may have, is nonviolent communication. And nonviolent or compassionate communication is a way of learning to connect to one another in a way that recognizes feelings and needs as messages, right? For what's happening for me, what's happening for somebody else. And in compassionate communication is the education on how do I connect to my needs and how do I communicate them in a way that cares for me and cares for others in my environment. And what that does is it opens up the various strategies that become available as we meet our needs. Meeting our need for health can look like changing our diet. It can look like increasing our movement. It can look like getting more sleep. It can look like getting out in nature and going camping for the weekend. All of those can meet our needs for health. Which one resonates with you most? Which one are you most likely to do? And every time we meet one of our needs, we're not only sending that sense of safety, we motivate ourselves to continue that self-care journey. Because it's coming from an intrinsic, internal space, not an external space of what do I need to do? How do I get external acceptance. What are the external parameters for health? What are the external parameters for relationship? What are the external parameters for activity? Right? It's an internal connection. It's an internal message. It's an internal drive, an internal motivation. And that helps not only make it sustainable, but take you to that state of wonderful. When you're telling yourself, I don't need to eat the kale and broccoli. I love Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. I don't need to go to the gym for an hour. I can go dancing for that time. You're elevating your experience. You're connecting to yourself on such a deep level. You're creating that sense of safety. You're decreasing that inflammatory cascade. You're in that state of rest, digest, reproduce, and thrive. And you're elevating your experience from wellness to wonderful. Life really can become wonderful when you're finding these strategies that are actually working for you in meeting those needs that are so that are universal and that happen to be important to you at the time. I know I've said a lot, and I know that it can come out as it may feel overwhelming. Wow, there are so many things to pay attention to. Where do I start? How do I start? And that's it. That's what the beauty about it is. It's an individual journey, and it's not something that, like the infinity loop, it's something that you can start anywhere and end up anywhere, right? So if you take the idea behind the 9 pillars is for you to take inventory, for you to start with a self-connect, see where am I thriving? What areas of my life are actually thriving right now? What areas need a little bit more attention? And in the areas that need a little bit more attention, that's where you're going to go to at that particular time. And that's going to change, right? We talked about connection in the form of family and friends. Work is another area of connection. It's an area that meets our needs for meaning and purpose. How do we derive meaning and purpose? And here's another example. Maybe some of us are in jobs that don't meet that need for meaning and purpose. Does that mean that our needs for meaning and purpose can't be met? No. Work is one strategy for meeting needs for meaning and purpose. It's not the only strategy for meeting needs for meaning and purpose. We can volunteer somewhere. We can have a creative outlet that brings us meaning and purpose. Though once we can identify what's my actual need, then I can start getting very clear on what are the strategies to meet them. Spirituality is the same. Some of us turn to the strategy of religion, some to mindfulness and meditation, some to being in the natural world. Right? Those become the strategies when we recognize a need to connect to something greater than ourselves, to have a sense of interdependence. And that's how, if we are consciously taking inventory, and that starts with a self, then we're naturally going to be connecting to these pillars with not very much active work. It may take time for this shift to happen. It may take time. It's like learning a new language. Whenever you're starting something new, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to learn the lingo. It's going to take time. Connecting to needs is something that, although it sounds like it's a pretty basic, easy, simple thing. Oh, we all have universal needs. I can connect to my needs and values. It's surprising once you start on that journey, the discovery of, wow, I haven't been connected to my needs. I've been running on autopilot. I've been so deep in survival mode. I've been feeling so burnt out and disconnected. I haven't been present for I don't know how long. You become that person testing the plates to see, what flavors you actually like. Connecting to what activity I actually want to do. How do I want to transition into my state of sleep? How do I want to talk to my family and friends? How do I want to show up for them? Do I really want to go to this party? Do I really want to go to that family gathering? And if I don't, can I communicate that in a way that cares for myself and for others? Or do I go out of obligation? Do I suppress, repress? We have that fork in the road, the opportunity for life to be pretty contracted or life to be pretty expansive. It starts with a self and that self connection. Um, so how we turn it around is we really spend time in that self space, connecting and identifying the threats your body is experiencing. Where am I sensing danger? Where am I suppressing? Where am I repressing? Where am I doing so much out of obligation and resentment? And then how do I regulate? That's the number one. When we're regulated in ourself, then we can start looking at all of the other areas. Then we open up the space to even pay attention to what else is going on. We pull ourselves out of fight, flight, freeze, or faint by taking that moment to self-regulate, to slow it down. And it doesn't have to be by hours, it can be by seconds or minutes. And that really decreases mobilization. It more readily sets the safety brake that gives us those messages of safety, that breaks the inflammatory cascade that's in our bodies, that promotes the healing, rest, digest, thrive. In our regulation, we can start paying attention to where we have opportunities to resource. How's my sleep? How's my nutrition? How's my activity? And not so much, have I played today? If I haven't, how would I enjoy playing? And again, not for a long amount of time. And it could be merged together. Maybe I'm going to play with a new recipe and see what happens. Maybe I'm going to play with whatever activity I choose. Maybe I'm going to do Zumba today. Maybe I'm going to go for that walk outside because it's so beautiful. So we can mix them together, right? And in that resourcing, once we are regulated and resourced, now we can connect to our external world. We can show up as we desire with that intention that we desire to connect to our family and friends, to show up at work with whatever our goals are for our work, to connect to an interdependence that's greater to ourselves. And it could manifest as spirituality or something else for you. And to find time, to find space to appreciate and or experience our natural world. And that can get expansive too. Do we need to actually be out in nature? Yes, that's super beneficial. But can we have pictures of nature in our home? Can we have plants? Yes, that's another way to experience nature if you can't get outdoors. So that's the ability to connect to what is the need that I want, and then how do I go about attaining that in a way that feels good for me, and when it involves others, can feel good for them too. It's about awareness, not perfection. As we go, as we learn a new language, we're gonna make mistakes. We're going to have bumps in the road. And I love those because they're learning opportunities. And how you're going to know about them is you're going to have the unpleasant feelings that are going to tell you, wait a minute, that's not working for me. That's not working for me is the fork in the road. Do I want it to continue to not work for me, suppress, repress, come out of obligation, resentment, and numb myself out and just do it anyway? Or do I have an opportunity to look at it differently and explore it in a different light? So connecting to ourselves, noticing our pleasant and unpleasant feelings, recognizing the needs driving those feelings. And one of the best ways to learn this, if you're interested, is we have on We Heal a feelings and needs chart. If you go to our resources and our connection resources, there's an abbreviated and a long list of feelings and needs. But they're all over the internet. You can find them and print it out. Print several of them out. Put them around the house. Carry them in your pocket. And when you're starting to feel those unpleasant feelings, pull it out. Start getting familiar with the vocabulary of needs, recognizing the needs driving your feelings, and then exploring the strategies that could meet those needs. The idea is to get curious, get creative, get expansive, pull out of scarcity mentality, pull out of survival mode. And that's the path to take yourself from illness to wellness to wonderful. So I'm going to stop sharing and open up for questions if anybody has them.
Great. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that presentation. So we're going to officially begin the Q&A portion. And just real quickly, though, how would everyone get in touch with you if they'd like to follow your work, and how would they get your books?
Yeah. So Wellness to Wonderful, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on our site, which is weheal.health, WEHEAL.health. And that's a way also to connect to me or my partner, Matthew Letterman.
Okay, great. So if you want to see what books that they have it there, you can go check out our bookstore, and then you can buy it at We Heal, and you can buy it I'm sure on Amazon as well.
Mhm.
So all right, great. So we're going to officially begin the Q&A portion. For the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, you can please raise your hand in Zoom. The instructions for how to do so are in the chat. We don't take questions directly from the chat, so if you could raise your hand, that'd be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to go ahead and start asking the question. So what inspired you to write this wellness book after the success of your film, Forks Over Knives?
Yeah, I think there are many, many, many things that I love about my partnership with my husband. But one of them is we are regularly seeking and looking to learn. That is part of our ethos. That self-inventory and that check-in and holding each other accountable for living our best lives. And this book came out of really connecting to the fact that we're doing a lot of things really well, and we're still not living our best lives. So what are our additional opportunities? And one of the things that we connected to in that is that, there are sleep, nutrition, and activity are things that most people know to hone and optimize when they're trying to optimize their health. But those other pieces, that self-connection, play, the ability to resource and regulate first, and how that impacts our connection to our external world, our family, our friends, our work, how we perceive our meaning and purpose, how we connect to being not alone and isolated and small, but interdependent in our natural world and that realm of spirituality, however it manifests for people. So that was what came out of like, where are we still missing things?
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what was your involvement in the film Forks Over Knives?
Yeah, so my husband and I had a clinic at the time that was using nutrition and lifestyle medicine to prevent and reverse disease. And so in the film Forks Over Knives, my husband is in it for the most part, working with the patients in that documentary.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, and just as a side note, that was actually the first film that I had seen or anything that really got me inspired to go down this path myself. So thank you
Okay.
for what you guys did. So,
Oh.
I know you tackled this in your presentation, but what does wellness to wonderful mean?
Yeah, so for me, wellness has kind of become ubiquitous and almost like something that we don't even understand anymore. We say it almost in that automatic autopilot. How are you doing? I'm well. How are you doing? I'm fine. I'm good. But that no longer has like that has become a normalized state that still contains a whole lot of sickness. I'm well with autoimmune disease that's flaring, with diabetes that's out of control, with a heart attack that I just had last week, but I'm well now, right? So taking or you maybe your health is optimized, but emotionally you're still feeling lonely, you're still feeling isolated, you're not connected to your family and friends, you're in the way that you would like. You're not finding your meaning and purpose at work or in other facets of your life, right? So even though maybe physically you're well, emotionally and mentally you're not. And so the idea of elevating your experience, taking it from that wellness to wonderful, life is wonderful is a place where you can say, you know what? Life is going to have ups and downs. It's not about being happy all the time, but I know what I need to do in this space to get myself to live my best life. And maybe there are times where I can't tend to it as I would like, but I'm aware. I have the resilience, the cognition, the ability to cope with the downs. I know how to get back to the ups. It's you're no longer on autopilot. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, wellness, I guess, you're saying like, how you doing? I'm well, is almost like saying, can't complain,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to really feeling a vibrance inside you. So, can you explain your definition of wonderful and how it differs from the typical definition of physical health?
Yeah. So it's not limited to just physical health. The state of wonderful is really a space where you're not just physically healthy, but physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, like, and it's not about being happy all the time, but it's about being resilient. It's about being present. It's about being self-connected so that you are aware of what, um, you're aware of the life that you're actually living. You're not in that state of numbing autopilot survival mode. Your life feels expansive because even if maybe my nutrition isn't optimized right now, but I know what I could do to get there. And I'm going to pay that attention. I have a plan, right? So
Mhm.
you feel resilient, you feel um, vibrant, you feel present in the moment to your experiences and an advocate of the choices that you're making for yourself.
Great.
Versus in survival mode, oftentimes we succumb to our environment. We lose that power, we relinquish that autonomy and that agency and advocacy for ourselves.
Thank you. So, what are some key takeaways that your readers can expect to gain from your book?
So there are a number of them. One is obviously in more detail, why the pillars are important and then how to go about navigating them and paying them the attention that you would like. Um, and then there are some practical, I like how to put in practice. In theory, it's great. It sounds great in theory, but how do I actually implement it? So um, one of the things that's helpful in the book is there are a lot of practical applications for how this actually plays out in your life. How does it show up? I have two daughters, a 10 and a 12-year-old, and they appear a lot in the book as we navigate our family dynamics in all of those different pillars, to demonstrate how it can get done and where we fall short and need reminders on a regular basis and what we do to kind of bring ourselves back to that elevated state.
So there's obviously a lot of books on wellness and nutrition out there. What sets this book apart from other wellness and nutrition books on the market?
Yeah, well, I haven't read every single one, so I can't speak to all of them, but it doesn't silo, which is what I like. A lot of times what happens is we have so much information out there, but this is a book about nutrition, and this is a book about activity, and this is a book about mindfulness, and this is a book about sleep. And how do you integrate all of those? It becomes, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, how do I take this and this and this? And there's a whole book on play. But how do I take all these and actually integrate them into my daily living? And what Wellness to Wonderful aims to do is really allow you to see how those 9 pillars integrate into your day to day. And it does a lot of the integration for you.
Thank you. So we're going to take an audience question. MR, please state where you're from and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. I'm from California. This has been so helpful and fascinating. My question is about the fight, flight, freeze, faint. Could you please talk a little bit about the faint response? I've not heard of that before. I've heard of fawn, but not faint. Thank you.
Yeah. So when you think of animals in nature, right, they will fight, they will flee. If they're captured, they will fight. And at that point where they realize nothing's going to help, there's a freezing, almost fainting. So you don't experience the pain, you almost knock out. And we do that too. We become the way that it manifests in our lives is paralysis. A lot of times we're paralyzed to make change. We're paralyzed to take accountability or to take self-inventory. We go into that state of, it's almost like a numb autopilot state where we're not actively aware or present to our experiences. It's like if you've ever, I imagine many of us will have that experience where you're driving to a familiar place and you get there and say, did I run a red light? Was I present to this? Like, I got here, but wait a minute. Did I remember how I did that? No, because we're not conscious to our moment to moment experience. We're checked out.
Thank you. Just on the faint thing, and just out of curiosity, you often see like in a movie, someone gets scared and they faint. Is that is that a real response? Is that a common response? It's always kind of played off as comical. Is that a response from, I don't
You
know
can
if you know.
have you can have that vasovagal, where you're just so stressed out, everything goes internal that and you can drop. I When I say freeze faint, it doesn't necessarily have to be a literal
Okay.
fainting, more of like I'm completely checked out. Like freezing, you're still there, you're aware, right? You're maybe physically frozen. Faint, it's almost like your whole mental, emotional, and physical state is checked out.